everybody, and welcome back to Lindsey's Little Library. So I'm here today because, well, 'tis the new year. So we are barely into 2024, and I wanted to come on here and tell you what my best 23 books of 2023 were. I didn't plan on doing 23. I think my initial plan was to do like a fabulous 15 or something like that. But when I went through and sorted my reading journal spreadsheet that I've done for the first time ever, which I absolutely loved. I should do a whole separate video on that. I should. But I sorted it by 5 stars, by 4.5 and 5 stars. And I had 23 of them. So I was like, well, that just works nicely. So we're going with 23. All right, no particular order. Do not ask me to give you my favorite book. I don't know how to do that. So this is just top 23, probably in order of how I read them. All right, first book I want to talk about is The House on the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. I was slightly skeptical when reading this book. I just wasn't sure it was going to be for me. It's a little bit of a, not a little bit, it's a lot of it of a fantasy read. And this year I've kind of discovered or taken the stance that maybe fantasy isn't always for me. And this book was like, Lindsey, you're funny because you're gonna love this one. So this one involves a magical island. We have our main character, Linus, who is a very by the book, very like, this is my schedule and this is how it works and this is what my day looks like and this is my life. And he happens to be a caseworker at the department in charge of magical youth. He's 40, has this tiny house, like I said, kind of just a very beige life. He is summoned by extremely upper management, who is then given him a new assignment. He has to travel to an orphanage on a very distant island on the Cerulean Sea. And he has to determine whether the 6 children, magical children that are there, are so dangerous that they're likely to bring to the end of the world, basically. And he needs to figure out like what's going on there and evaluate the care that they're under. When Linus gets there, he meets, yes, 6 very unique and magical kids. I mean, one is the son of the devil, and one is a really grumpy gnome who is not really a child. And one Chauncey just wants to be a bellhop. I mean, he kind of is a blob, but you know, you cannot help but read this book and fall in love with these children, fall in love with Linus, fall in love with this whole entire story. It is a hug in a book, and it's fantastic, and I loved it. If this is how this is gonna go, this can be a long video. Okay, I'm gonna try to rein in my descriptions. Next one I want to talk about is Magic Hour by Kristen Hanna. I'm loving Kristen Hanna, and I'm trying to read her to zero. This was another attempt at that. This takes place in the Pacific Northwest. Basically, we have 2 sisters. One of them kind of finds herself with a bit of a scandal that's left her career in ruins, and I believe she was in California, and her sister's like, come up here, Pacific Northwest, take some time off. And she's a child psychiatrist. When she gets there, she's kind of settling in, and she realizes her sister also had her come up there for another reason. There's a child that's basically in need of her help. This child just wandered in from the woods, kind of acts very wild, doesn't communicate, trying to figure out where this child came from and what the story is. And so Julia is kind of in charge of that, and we go through what happened and how she can help, and it was really, really great. I loved it. I still think about this book. All right, next one I read was Summer's Child by Diane Chamberlain. This one takes place on like the coast of North Carolina, South Carolina, the typical setting that Diane Chamberlain does with us. This one is again trying to solve the mystery behind this little girl who was kind of left on the beach one day, brand new baby, just born and just left on the beach. And then our other main character is the one who found her, and now we are fast forward into the future, and kind of the answers to this question are starting to kind of want to come out. So I don't want to give too much more away is what I'm trying to do. Next one I want to talk about was a fantastic pick that I grabbed from the library very randomly. It is Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. I thought this book was written in a very unique way. So we have our main character who is on his way to this kind of isolated ski resort where his family is getting together for a family reunion. His family is interesting. They have, you know, some not great relationships and some great relationships. And when he gets there, they're kind of being targeted in a way, and some people end up dead. And like the title says, everyone in my family has killed someone. So it goes from family member to family member to family member telling this story of what is happening in this isolated little ski village where they're at, or this isolated ski resort where they are, as well as potentially what has happened in the past. And it was a ride, I'll tell you that. Then I have a few historical fictions on my list. I have The Rose Code by Kate Quinn. Kate Quinn, I love her. I love her. This one is World War II historical fiction. We are following a group of, what do they call themselves? We have a group of people who are working at a place called Bletchley Park, where they are attempting to break German military codes. And it basically follows a small group of them, mainly Asla and Mab. So that's our past timeline, and then we have our present timeline. So we have 1940, 1947, so we're post World War II. And these three, it's Asla, Mab, and Beth, were super close as code breakers. Now we are in the future, and something happened between them, and now they have to come back together to unite, to join up to solve some things. We're gonna leave it at that. But fantastic, loved it. I know it's a chunker, but oh, it was so good, so good. And then I want to talk about The Housemate by Frida McFadden. Oh, Frida. She is beyond fabulous. I believe I have a new obsession with a new author. I actually read a few of her books this year. But The Housemate is probably the one that I would recommend as a new person reading Frida McFadden. That's the one to pick up. So we have, again, our main character who is kind of down on her luck, living in her car, just basically trying to survive, and has this opportunity to become this housemaid at this rather large house for this family, and hopefully makes the money to be able to get herself out of the situation she's in. She's absolutely desperate for a job because she's not having luck getting a job, because she does have a criminal past. So she really doesn't have a choice. And let's just say the insanity starts from the beginning. And it just doesn't stop. And it's so fabulous. All right, then I want to talk about I Must Betray You by Ruta Sepetys. So Ruta Sepetys, as you guys know, is just one of my faves, and I got to meet her this year. Amanda and I went to an author event that she was at, so that was super fun. But I Must Betray You takes place in the late 80s in Romania. We follow 17-year-old Christian. He has dreams of becoming a writer, and yet he lives in a place in Romania where you're just not really free to dream. It is ruled by a tyrannical dictator, and this dictator has hidden from the world the truth of what is going on in Romania and how restricted everything is, because it's relying on kind of this secret police of like, there's all these rules, and if you see your neighbor doing something wrong, you can turn them in and be rewarded for it. So you don't know who to trust. what to trust, yet you are desperate to do anything you can in order to survive. This was so eye-opening because it was the late 80s. Granted, I was 8 or 9, but I just don't recall learning about any of this. So, which is what I love most about books, is that I'm learning so much, even though this is a work of fiction. Knowing Rudis Petty's shows her homework, and definitely had me go down a rabbit hole with this one. So I loved it. All right, then we'll stick on historical fiction train. We have Crow Mary, Kathleen Grissom. Again, another historical fiction, yet taught me so much, and again went down a huge rabbit hole. This is a historical fiction following the life of Crow Mary, but it is something that has been approved not only by her family but by the Crow tribe. So follows her account in her life as she is growing up. What years? 1870s in Montana. There's definitely a lot of turmoil going on between the US government and the Native Americans at the time. She's trying to balance this, how do I stay true to my ancestry and my roots, yet I am married to a white fur trader, and seeing how do we continue to move forward, and how do I continue to move forward and continue to move my traditions forward, yet still just be this balance. I was blown away. I love this book. I gave it 5 stars. It was fantastic. I do have one middle grade book that made the cut this year. This is Alone by Megan Freeman. This is a story told in verse and follows 12-year-old Maddie. She comes up with this elaborate scheme for a sleepover, and basically all of the girls say they're going to be at Maddie's dad's house, but she tells her dad she's going to be at her mom's house, and they all really plan on meeting at her grandparents' place. Her grandparents are like snowbirds. They're not there for the winter. And unfortunately at the very last minute, her friends kind of have to ditch out. And so she decides, you know what, I'm just going to go by myself. I kind of want to be away from my family. I want to take this time. Nobody's going to bug me. I'm just going to enjoy myself by alone. Unfortunately for her, overnight, the entire town is evacuated. And her dad thinks she's with her mom thinks she's with her dad. All cell phones have to be left behind. Very minimal communication. It's like you had to get up and leave. And she's left behind by herself in the whole city, all alone. And it was so good. Like I said, told in verse, it goes really fast. But for middle grade, I thoroughly enjoyed that. Which was a goal for myself this year, was to read a little bit more middle grade, and I definitely read more, for sure. All right, sorry, we're getting there. That was number 9, just a few more left. Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. I'm sure this isn't a shocker. This, I feel like, is on a lot of people's favorite books of the year list. It follows a chemist, Elizabeth Zott, as she is in the 1960s facing horrible sexism and wants to be a chemist, but there kind of just isn't room for women, and is forced to find a different way of supporting her family by being on a cooking show. This is also was made into, I believe, a little mini series on Apple TV, which is what I want to watch it. Horribly bad. Want to watch it, but I've heard great things about that show, as well as just this book was fantastic. I loved it. Do not let the cover fool you. It's not a romance. This is historical fiction, and there's some heavy topics, and it was great. Then we have The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell by Robert Dugani. This follows the life of Sam Hell. His real name is Sam Hill. They call him Sam Hell because he has, I don't remember what it's called, but he's basically born with red pupils. So his eyes are very red. His mother deems him perfect, and this is God's will, and this is how you're going to live, and you need to figure out how to navigate life this way. and it's not easy for him at all. And it just follows his journey and what he went through, where it led him, what lessons were learned, what friends he had. It is a fantastic story. I'm not doing it justice, but just trust me on all of these. Just trust me, right? All right, next we have Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. Love me some Abby Jimenez, and I don't know about you, but I think she's getting better and better and better with every single book. This one is kind of the companion novel to her previous book that I can't think of what the name is. Doesn't matter. So main kind of themes in this one, of course, we have love to hate relationships, but there's an anxiety theme in here that I thought she did just spot on, like represented it to an absolute T, which is probably why I love it as much as I do, but it was so good. Next one I listened to, this one, it is Drowning by TJ Newman. I cannot talk about this book enough. It is so fantastic. Don't read it on an airplane unless you like that sort of thing, which I do. But it basically follows the survivors of a airplane crash that crashed in the ocean and sunk, and they're still alive within the fuselage. It was so good. Then we have a thinker. Definitely have a thinker. Mad Honey by Jodi Picoult and Jennifer Finley Bolin. This one follows a couple of characters. We have Olivia. She knows what it feels to start over. She married a brilliant surgeon, raised their beautiful son Asher, but yet she was upended when her husband revealed that he had a darker side. Never imagined she'd end up back in her hometown, but she's living in the house she grew up with and taking over her father's beekeeping business. Then we have Lily, is also familiar with do-overs. Her and her mom relocated to the same small town for her final year in high school. They both just were looking for a fresh start. After a short while, Asher and Lily become pretty close, very close. He basically falls in love with her. She can't help but fall in love with him. It was a match made in heaven until Lily is dead and Asher is the prime suspect. And there's so much more than that I can't even talk about. So good. So good. Then I read Razor Blade Tears by S.A. Cosby, and I have no clue where that book went. It is MIA. But this one follows two dads who are basically looking for revenge for the murder of their sons. And they are very unlikely characters that you wouldn't think would team up, but they find basically they have no choice. They're teaming up. They're gonna go take care of things. And it's brutal. Like, be prepared. Be prepared. If you are not into brutality and the blood and guts side of things, don't read this book. But if you're okay with that, I thought it was a fantastic read, if that's possible. I think so. Next one, another library book I picked up, Looking for Jane by Heather Marshall. This, again, fantastic book. Takes place in Canada. I want to say it was like the 70s, 60s, 50s to 70s. I might be confusing this one with a different book. But Jane is basically an underground organization that will perform safe abortions for women. This is during a time that abortions were illegal. Yet we read in the book that they for our character was necessary. So kind of talks about women's rights a lot. I thought it was fantastic personally. It was good. All right, then we get into kind of not much for like, I can't believe how much sci-fi I read this year and how much has made it to my top books, but Devolution by Max Brooks. I remember listening to this book. I could not stop listening to it to the point where I was trying to find things for me to do while listening to this book, like weeding my garden. I don't weed. I don't like to do a lot of stuff outside. I like to be outside. I don't like to take care of landscaping. Not my forte. But I was, because I couldn't stop listening to this darn book. Basically, there's a volcanic eruption that cuts off access to what is called Green Loop. This very isolated kind of top of the line community where they rely heavily on information technology, basically. Like, all of their food is delivered very timely. They don't necessarily have a lot of like stock. All of like a bunch of their cars are solar powered. It was very cut off because once people couldn't get to it and your electricity out, this town was completely cut off from resources. Unfortunately, with that same volcanic eruption, a group of Bigfoots, Sasquatches, also gets cut off and doesn't have a food supply except for Green Loop. And there we go. Oh my God, that was just crazy. It was crazy, but I loved it. All right, again, sci-fi. I don't know. Andy Weir, Project Hail Mary. Love this one. We have our main character, Ryland, who is on his own. He wakes up and he's in a spaceship and he doesn't remember why he's there and he's by himself. Now what? And so his memories kind of start coming back to him and he's starting to recall what he's on. He's on basically this Earth-saving mission and now he has to do it by himself. Like, it's a wild ride, but one of my favorite characters of all time is in this book. And it's not even human. It's so great. I loved it. All right, then we have The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. This is probably one of my best Riley Sagers that I have read, if I dare say that. I loved it. It took place, I guess there's a small amount of houses that are on this lake. And we have our main character who has kind of gone back to live in this house. It's a house that she grew up in. And she's mourning the loss of her husband. And she's drinking away the loss of her husband. And in the midst of mourning and drinking, she ends up meeting her neighbors across the lake and potentially witnessing some things that make her question what exactly happened to her neighbor. To the outside world, it looks like via social media, it looks like her neighbor's fine, but she hasn't seen her. The neighbor's husband is sketchy. And so she's trying to figure out what the truth is, and it was so good. So good. All right, we're almost there. Bluebird by Sharon Cameron. Oh, Sharon Cameron, again, I've read 2 books by her this year. Fantastic. Bluebird is one, it's post-World War II. It follows a young girl and her sister as they come to the United States from Germany, kind of as refugees. And you find out that she's really here on a bit of a mission to kind of find out the truth and to maybe hunt somebody down that maybe did some bad things. So good. And then we have The Diamond Eye by Kate Quinn. Yep, Kate Quinn gets 2 spots on my list. This one follows Mila. She is a Russian female sniper during World War II. Need I say more? I don't think so. I think that's all you need. Then we have Things We Do in the Dark by Jennifer Hillier. We have our main character, Paris, right? Yeah. Who is, very beginning of the book, found covered in her husband's blood, holding a weapon, and her husband's dead body is in the bathtub right behind her, and the police are there. Yet she didn't do it. But yet her past has a whole bunch of secrets that's super crazy that she doesn't necessarily want to come out, but yet somehow she needs to prove her innocence. Wild ride. And then we have Take My Hand. This is by Dolan Perkins Valdez. This is the 23rd book for my favorite 23 of 23. This one is historical fiction, follows our main character, Sybil. We are 1970s in Montgomery, Alabama. Sybil is super excited to take her first nursing job. She is there to change the world. And she's assigned 2 girls, and she has to go do home visits with them, and she's instructed to put them on birth control. But these girls are 11 and 13. And Sybil start wondering, her question is, why are we doing this? And she starts really questioning things and really seeing a correlation between people living in poverty yet feeling pressured to have some sort of reproductive rights taken away from them. It's sad. It's heart-wrenching. I love it because Sybil is not a perfect character. I can't help but love her and root for her, but yet she pisses me off sometimes. It's so, so great. And you get a couple of timelines. You get kind of what would be quote unquote present day, as Sybil is having to revisit what happened in her past, and then you start getting the story from the past, and it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. I've given this to so many people to read, and I've yet to have somebody say that it wasn't good. That so many people love this one. It's not always the case with the rest of them. I mean, not everybody loves Mad Honey, and not everybody loves Lessons in Chemistry. Not everybody loves Devolution. But you know what? This list is a pretty decent snapshot of my reading taste. It is all over the board. So it comes down to what I like in books is I just like a good book. I love a good story. So hopefully this has given you some inspiration. If you have stuck around this far, I appreciate it. But highly, highly suggest any and all of the books on here. I actually was thinking of a few that come in close second. So I may do like a next, another group of favorite books from the year. I don't know. We'll see. What are your favorite books from the year? Comment below. Leave them in a list. I love a good list of books to check out. Otherwise, like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.